Well, the championship 4 has been set, and we are just one race remaining in this long and turbulent season. But before all that, the playoff debate has reached a fever pitch. And by playoff debate, I mean, does this playoff format belong in the sport? In my opinion, fuck no. But we're going to get into all that, so here we go. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packerman, and welcome to today's edition of the Fuel, where today we are going to be reviewing the XFinity 500 from the Martinsville Speedway, the final race of the round of 8, and the penultimate race of the 2020 season. Season's almost over, folks. Never thought we would get to this point where we just have one race remaining. Never thought NASCAR would be able to get all 36 races in, but here we are. You know, after everything that happened earlier this year with COVID and, you know, having to take a 2.5 month break, here we are. And next week at this time, we will be crowning 3 new champions in the NASCAR's top 3 divisions. But before we get into all of that, we have to go through what happened here in this race at Martinsville. In particular, the whole playoff debate. Now, this isn't really anything controversial in the literal sense. It's more of a hotly debated topic, because for basically the last 24 hours now, this has been a heated argument going back and forth between the fan base, YouTubers, the whole 9 yards, about whether or not this playoff format should even be allowed to exist anymore in the realm of NASCAR. Because Kevin Harvick, who is basically the most dominant driver of this season, and under the old format would have locked up the championship already, did not make it to the championship 4 because he had a pretty crappy Texas race, and then in Martinsville he was having a pretty shitty day, and because one of the guys below the cutoff managed to win the race, and we'll get to that when we get to it, he basically had to try to get in on points, and he was just 1 point out and tried to move at the end of the race, and it ended up backfiring, and he ended up not making it into the championship 4. And what this has done, it has sparked a very, very heated discussion about the legitimacy of the playoff and whether or not, you know, this format should be allowed to continue as it is. Well, you already know my feelings about this godforsaken playoff format. It's garbage. You know, and I've been saying that from day fucking one, all the way back before its inception in 2014 when it was first announced. I can't remember which episode of the Fuel it was, but I showed proof that I have despised this format from day one. I can't remember which episode it was, but I know I recorded it at some point. I just can't remember. But the bottom line is this format sucks. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Where do I even begin here? Because there have been some discussions about it, and also some comparisons that really shouldn't be made. I mean, this format, I mean, from the points resets to the fact that it's a one race championship, is fucking garbage. What are you cats doing? Huh? Can't you see I'm trying to record over here? The downside to having cats. Anyways, yeah, I've been pretty much against, this format from day one, as I've been saying. This point resetting bullshit, I mean, I've never been a fan of it. I mean, the old chase made more sense than this shit. I mean, because at the very least, you didn't have the points resetting, 5 fucking different times. There was just one time, 10 races, go have at it, instead of this whole, we're just going to do 3 races at a time and eliminate drivers, every step of the way, So I've never been a fan of this format. And I know that this format has its fans, and if you like the format, that's all fine and dandy. But don't you be doing the Jehovah's Witnesses thing and coming knocking on my door and saying that this format is going to save my soul. Because I don't give a fuck. Okay, I will slam the goddamn door in your face. I've been watching this format for the last 7 seasons. It is fucking trash. I don't think this is the type of format that we need to be using to determine a champion. Because, I mean, considering that, here's the problem. NASCAR wants to keep replicating, they want to have that Game 7 moment every single year. Here's the problem with that. When you're trying to manufacture Game 7 moments, it feels forced. It doesn't feel organic in any way whatsoever. And when you try to have these Game 7 moments year after year after year, it loses its luster. It loses its meaning. And I dare say that the championship doesn't mean as much anymore. I mean, you could tell in that post-race interview with Kevin Harvick, he said that, winning the championship is not like when Earnhardt or Petty won it. So what the fuck does that tell you? I mean, if the drivers don't think the championship is as important as, having a good season, that's a problem. Because when you go into a certain racing series that you've always wanted to be a part of, the ultimate goal of being a race car driver is to win the championship. That's always been the ultimate goal. And when that goal is not exactly the main focus anymore in a racing series, that's a fucking problem. Not to mention the fact that there is no other closed circuit motorsport that has this playoff format. Now you can say that drag racing, the NHRA has a similar format, but the fact of the matter is they've always had a bracketed format anyway, because, I mean, it's 1v1, and they have to use that format to determine a winner and who finishes where and all that other shit. But the fact of the matter is no other closed circuit motorsport has a playoff, because they're smart enough to know that they don't need one. And the thing is, NASCAR came up with this because, I mean, let's be honest here, in the late 90s, early 2000s, NASCAR was in its boom period. I mean, it was probably the golden era of NASCAR. I would say from 2001 to about 2006 was when the sport was at its absolute best. The racing was absolutely spectacular. I mean, honestly, I couldn't wait for the races each and every week, because every time it would come around to race day, I would always have those fucking butterflies in my stomach. I was so excited to be able to watch a race, and the races were captivating. They were competitive, super competitive, and it had that unpredictability to it, which made it such an appeal. And the amount of fans that would fill those fucking grandstands each and every week. I mean, they were clearing easily 100,000 fans per week each cup race. I mean, it was truly the #2 sport in America, behind only the NFL. But then, its popularity began to wane, and it kind of fell out of, the fad, basically. the fad basically ended. But if they would have just kept things as they were, they would have fallen back to numbers that they saw in like the 80s. The boom period would have ended, but the die-hard fans would still be there. But NASCAR decided they didn't want the good times to end, so they tried to do anything necessary to try to keep those fans. But the problem was, they ended up alienating the ones that they had. And then they came up with this godforsaken format, and while I don't think it's the primary reason for its massive decline in recent years, I would say it was a big part of it, because a lot of the diehards were like, what the fuck is this? What is this bullshit that NASCAR is peddling? So yeah, I mean, truth be told, if we have to have some kind of format like this, why don't we just go back to the original chase? I mean, it had its inherent problems too, but I mean, it made more sense than this pile of puke. And I would make a small tweak to it. Have a 24, because in the previous edition of the chase, as it was called, it was actually 26 races with a 10 race run, a 10 race chase. How about to make it, a little more, uniform, a little more legitimized, have a 24 race regular season, and then a 12 race playoff. So that way you can say, yeah, you'll have a dozen races, to try to earn the most points. If you want to keep the playoff points in place and use those to kind of rebalance the field when they go to the playoff, into the chase, that'd be fine. And then it would be a 12 race run to the championship instead of just one like this is. So it would make a lot more sense. That's just how I feel. But that's not what's really got me irritated about the whole thing. If you'll notice, the name of this episode, false equivalency. Now, you're probably wondering, what the hell is false equivalency? Well, that's something that's been basically running rampant about this playoff format, because people have basically been making comparisons to stick and ball sports. Just because two things share a single trait doesn't mean they're the same thing. So here is the definition of false equivalence. False equivalence is a logical fallacy in which equivalence is drawn between two subjects based on flawed or false reasoning. This fallacy is categorized as a fallacy of inconsistency. A colloquial expression of false equivalency is comparing apples to oranges. How many times have I said that? Comparing apples to oranges is dumb. That's false equivalency. There have been people that have been trying to compare NASCAR to, say, the NFL, or the NBA, or Major League Baseball, or the National Hockey League. Comparing stick and ball sports to NASCAR. Saying, and even, the guys in the broadcast booth were making those comparisons as well. Denny Hamlin made a comparison to that sense. I know Rick Allen basically made a comparison to the New England Patriots, saying how, well, they went 18-0, but then lost in the Super Bowl. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? It just fucking pisses me off so much, because you cannot compare NASCAR to stick and ball sports. It's a fucking motorsport. You drive race cars. You don't hit a ball. You don't kick a ball. You don't throw a ball. You drive race cars. But people are trying to use, the playoffs, or trying to use, stick and ball sports as a line of reasoning to basically, what's the word I'm looking for? To try to justify the existence of the playoffs in NASCAR. Do I even need to say how fucking stupid that sounds? I mean, seriously. You cannot compare the two, okay? In these stick and ball sports, it's two teams going at each other head to head. And yes, while there are, at least 30 teams in a lot of these sports, you're not going to face all the teams in one season in a lot of cases, in particular the NFL. That's why they have a playoff to determine who the best of the best is. But it's 1v1. It's one team against another. And you only face one team on one day or just one per week or something of that nature. In NASCAR, or in motorsports in general, but NASCAR in particular, there's 40 teams competing against each other at the same time. And you see those same 40 competing against each other every single week. But you want to compare stick and ball sports to motorsports. Get the fuck out of here. I am sick and fucking tired of this false equivalency running rampant. They are not the fucking same. Stop with the comparisons. For fuck's sake. But basically people have been trying to use that to justify NASCAR having a playoff format. Are you fucking kidding me? It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. This format is fucking trash. That's period, point blank, end of discussion. And I will not be swayed on that. So, I mean, you can try to convince me otherwise, but don't waste your time. Because my opinion is not going to fucking change. This format is garbage. And the day it goes the way of the dodo bird will be a day worth celebrating. And here's the thing. I can understand people not wanting to go back to like a whole 36 race format. Because let's be completely honest here. This 36 race season is a grind. It really is. It's a long fucking season. It's the longest racing season of any motorsport in the world. And it has been for a long time. Pretty much since its inception. I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, they would run 40, 50, 60 races a year. And then when the modern era finally came to be, I think in like the early 70s, they said, you know what, we need to condense this down quite a bit. So they condensed it down to about 30 races a year. And eventually it crept back up and up and up and up with the popularity of NASCAR, which is why we saw a lot of new tracks being built in the early 2000s to accommodate that. So now we have basically been on 36 races a year since the year 2001. And it's remained that way ever since. But the fact of the matter is, it is a grind. It really is. So I can understand not wanting a whole 36 race season, to decide the champion, although to me that would be the right way. But I know there are some people that want that, and there's some people that still like the playoff format as it is. Why don't we meet in the middle and just go back to the chase? Because you'll have the best of both worlds. But one thing's for sure, I am sick and tired of having this debate. Let's get rid of this playoff format. Go back to the original chase with a little tweak. Have it a dozen drivers get in for a dozen race chase. Reset the points, based on how they did in the first 24 races. Just line them up for the final 12 races, say go at it. And whoever has the most points at the end of those 12 races is the champion. And let's be completely honest here. Did we have this many debates about the chase format when it was introduced? I can guarantee you it certainly wasn't as many or wasn't as heated as it is now. Not to mention the fact that we didn't really put an asterisk next to these championships and say, did these drivers really deserve it? Ever since this playoff format was introduced in 2014, that's been the thing. Do these drivers deserve to be the champion? Is that fair to them? I don't think it is. But I'm done ranting about it. I mean, I'm fucking tired as it is. Because I worked a 10-hour day today, so I'm quite a bit tired. But I had to get that off my chest. It was fucking irritating me to no end. It's also one of the reasons why I moved News of the Week to next week for the championship finale. Because at least then we can tie up all the loose ends and end the season. So there you go. But without further ado, that's been my opening rant. So let's just go ahead and get into this review and get it done and over with. Alright, so here we go. The race review for the 2020 XFinity 500 at Martinsville. Stages broke down like this. First two stages 130 laps, with the third and final stage being 240 laps. Brad Keselowski started from the pole, but we got our first pure lead change right off the bat on lap 4 when Martin Truex Jr. Took the lead. He was obviously one of the favorites in this race, considering that he had won the last two Martinsville races. Elliott gets by Hamlin for second and is on Truex's back bumper for the race lead. We have a battle for third between Hamlin, Kes, and Kurt Busch, but we have our first caution on lap 61, which was the competition caution. Everyone comes in for service, and Truex wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. But we immediately get our second caution on lap 73 when Clint Bowyer spins in turns 1 and 2 after contact with teammate Eric Almirola. Whoops. Truex leads on the restart. Elliott starts challenging Truex for the lead, while Logano challenges Hamlin for third. And Elliott is able to get by for our second pure lead change on lap 89. It was pretty clear right from the get-go that Elliott and Truex were going to be the two favorites to win this race, which was bad news for the guys that were already in the top four, considering that those two were below the cut line. Really shook things up. Blaney gets by Keselowski for fifth, and we have our third caution on lap 105 when Garrett Smithley comes to a stop in turn 4 with a possible mechanical issue. Truex and Elliott stay out while everyone else comes in for fresh tires. So Elliott leads on the restart, but Hamlin pretty much proved how good fresh tires were when he charged all the way up to third on the fresh tires, and eventually gets by both Truex and Elliott for the race lead. It was good for them to try it out early on just to kind of see, what the tire wear was like, but it was pretty obvious that fresh tires were the way to go. So we had our third pure lead change on lap 113, and then we had our fourth caution on lap 115 when Joey Gase gets spun by Quinn Houff in turn 3. Interesting. Hamlin leads on the restarts. Alex Bowman moves up to third, also on fresh tires, and passes Elliott for second. Another guy below the cut line, even though he was having a pretty good playoff. Truex and Logano make contact, battling for fifth. Keselowski gets by Elliott for third, and Denny Hamlin wins stage number 1, scoring some much-needed points, which would actually come in handy later in the race. Everyone comes in for service, and Elliott wins the race off pit road. The Busch brothers lead the start of stage 2 after they stayed out. Kurt Busch battles brother Kyle for several laps before Kurt finally takes the lead. Then we have our fifth caution on lap 145 when Chris Buescher blows a motor after running into the back of Daniel Suarez, basically busting the radiator. So that was the end of Buescher's day. Kurt leads on the restart. Elliott challenges and takes the lead in turn 1 for a fourth pure lead change on lap 163. Eric Almirola is back up to fifth after being moved by teammate Clint Bowyer earlier for spinning him out, and starts challenging Kyle Busch for the fourth position. Truex gets by Almirola for fifth and Kyle Busch for fourth. Harvick has to make an emergency pit stop for a flat left rear tire after contact with Matt Kenseth. His Kenseth's right rear quarter panel was hanging way out, and you can see it basically cut into the left rear tire of Kevin Harvick, and he has to make an emergency stop, which puts him 2 laps down. So, and not to mention the fact that he didn't have a good car early in this race. They would make it better, but now he was 2 laps down, so he was way behind the 8 ball at this point. But the sixth caution of the day came out on lap 186 when Brennan Poole cuts down a left rear tire and pounds the turn 1 wall, or was it a left front tire? I think it was a left front tire, actually. I don't know why I said left rear, or wrote down left rear. It's actually a left front tire, and he pounds the turn 1 wall. Everyone comes in for service. Harvick stays out to take the wave around. and Elliott wins the race off pit road. So Elliott leads on the restart. Hamlin gets by Truex for second, and we have our 7th caution on lap 217 when John Hunter Nemechek spins Ryan Preece in turns 1 and 2. Harvick did not receive the free pass on this caution. Some drivers come in for service. Hamlin leads on the restart after staying out. Kez gets by Logano for third, so we have Penske cars running 2, 3, 4 at this point. Chase already up to third after restarting 16th on fresh tires. Of course, also having one of the best cars on the track helps too. Blaney starts challenging Hamlin for the lead, but Elliott is right there behind them and passes Blaney for second. Truex was also up to fourth. He was also on fresh tires. And then Elliott gets by Hamlin for the race lead for our 5th pure lead change on lap 240. Truex starts challenging Hamlin for second, and Chase Elliott wins stage number 2. And there was a great battle for third between Hamlin, Blaney, and Kurt Busch at the end of stage 2. Everyone comes in for service, and Elliott wins the race off pit road. But then before the start of stage 3, Hamlin has to come back down pit road to tighten lug nuts on the left front tire. Ouch. It's a good thing you got all them stage points, huh? So Elliott leads the start of stage 3. Truex challenges on the outside for the lead, but Elliott holds him off. Truex challenges him once again later on the run, but can't complete the pass. Ryan Blaney starts creeping up on the leaders at this point. Jimmy Johnson has to pit with a flat left rear tire. Harvick still trapped a lap down at this point, still trying to get that lap back. And it was at this point that, with Harvick struggling, Rick Allen made the comparison of the Patriots to Kevin Harvick, and it really fucking pissed me off, as I mentioned earlier. Enough with the false equivalency. It's getting extremely tiresome at this point. Logano gets by Blaney for the 3rd position among lap cars, and we have our 8th caution on lap 352 when Timmy Hill suffers a flat right rear tire. Everyone comes in for service. Logano wins the race off pit road, and this was where a bit of controversy, if you want to call it that, happened, where initially Chase Elliott was penalized for having his pit crew over the wall too soon. His jackman went over the wall too soon. But in a 1000 IQ move, and certainly one that I think saved Chase Elliott's shot at the championship, the jackman realized that he was over the wall too soon because Elliott was not within 1 box of their pit stall. He was actually about 2 back, and the jackman went over the wall too soon. He realized this, so he turned and went back to the pit wall, touched it to reestablish his position, to reset his position. And NASCAR looked at that and said, okay, that's good. And a lot of people were like, wow, were NASCAR really biased towards Chase Elliott on that? No, it's actually in the rule book. You can see right here, and you can thank Bob Pockrass for finding this one, because he went digging through it after, I think he went digging through the rule book after, the whole thing came up with Chase Elliott and his jackman. So here is the provision in the rule book. Crew members' feet and or pit equipment must not touch the pit road surface before the vehicle is 1 pit box away from its assigned pit box or the equivalent marked distance. Should a crew member's feet prematurely touch the pit road surface prior to servicing the car, here's the key thing, he didn't start servicing the car yet, said crew member can re-establish their position back to or behind service wall prior to servicing the vehicle to avoid a penalty. And because he did go back and he touched the wall, which it says in the rule book, it was a legal pit stop, and therefore Elliott was not penalized for it. Obviously there were some Elliott detractors that were crying foul, but I mean, you could watch it on the replay. I mean, the jackman realized he was over the wall too soon, turned around, went back to the pit box or the pit wall, touched it to reestablish position, and went back to servicing the car. Pretty cut and dry, if I may say so myself. And you're talking to someone who's not exactly an Elliott fan. I mean, I don't hate the guy either, but I don't consider myself a fan of Chase Elliott. I'm just kind of indifferent. But I recognize talent when I see it. But yeah, that was pretty interesting. But that was a heads-up move by the Jackman, and that may have saved Chase Elliott's potential championship season. Logano leads on the restart. Elliott gets by Keselowski for third as Penske teammates Logano and Blaney battle for the lead. And Blaney is able to get around Logano for the race lead for a 6-pure lead change on lap 369. Truex gets by Kurt Busch for fifth. Kez starts challenging Elliott for the third position. And we have our 9th caution on lap 400. James Davison in the 53 car loses power and stops in turn 2. And Kevin Harvick finally gets the free pass to get back on the lead lap. So he still has a shot at this point. Everyone comes in for service. Logano wins the race off pit road. And then Keselowski gets caught speeding exiting pit road. Uh-oh. So now he's back in the danger zone of not making it to the championship 4. So this just got interesting. So Logano leads on the restart. Truex with a great run around the outside to take the lead on the restart. So at this point, Harvick was +7, and Keselowski's speeding penalty put him at -7 below the cut line. Blaney gets by Logano for second. Elliott trying to get back into the top 5 after another slow stop. Then we get our 10th caution on lap 441. Byron backs it hard into the outside wall after losing a left rear tire, so his day was done. Everyone comes in for service. Truex wins the race off pit road. But Corey LaJoie stays out due to being out of tires. Uh-oh. So he leads on the restarts, but Truex clears him on the outside to take the lead. Elliott moves up to second and starts stalking Truex for the lead. And then Corey LaJoie gets black flagged for jumping the restart. Looked like he kind of jumped the start a little bit. And then Elliott manages to get by Truex for a 7th pure lead change on lap 357. And then the soul crusher for Truex reports a possible loose wheel. And he didn't want to make the pit stop, but we could see clearly on the camera that the tire was vibrating. It was clearly loose. So he basically had no choice but to make an emergency pit stop to change the tire. That was a heartbreaker for Truex, but you know, what can he do? Kez is now +1 on Harvick at this point as he moves through the field. Harvick's car has gotten better to where he's the second fastest car on the track. And now Hamlin is starting to struggle quite a bit. He's just 4 above the cut line. So all of a sudden, Hamlin is just above the cut line, Kez is just above the cut line, and Harvick is just below with a chance to make it in. So it has a 4.5 second lead with 20 laps to go. At this point, the battle for the win was basically over. So it was all up to who's going to get in on points. So Kez all over Bowman for the 5th position. And then Kez, Hamlin, and Harvick just 1 point separating them at the cut line. And if you're wondering who would get the tiebreaker if they were all tied, well, that would go to Harvick because he would have the best finish of the round with a 2nd at Kansas. But Chase Elliott ends up winning the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville to advance to the Championship 4. But Harvick still had one last opportunity. He had Kyle Busch in front of him. He was 1 point below the cut line. If he had one more point, he would tie both Keselowski and Denny Hamlin. And he would make it into the Championship 4. He would be one of the two to make it into the Championship 4. Based on his best finish of 2nd in the round. And I think actually Keselowski would have been the other one, because I think Keselowski's best finish of the round was like 4th or something like that. I don't think Hamlin had a finish that high in this round. At least I don't know. But one thing was for sure, Harvick would have made it into the Championship 4 if he would have gotten that one position. And he actually managed to get underneath the Kyle Busch in turn 3 and was side by side with him. But he realized that Kyle Busch was going to get the run off the turn on the outside and was going to beat him back to the line. So he did the only thing left that he could do to try to make it to the Championship 4. He turned Kyle Busch off the final turn, coming to the checkered flag. And it would have worked, except that he ended up spinning himself into the inside wall, because he basically turned right into the left rear quarter panel of Kyle Busch. I mean, he succeeded in turning the 18, but his momentum and, you know, trying to turn it back to the left, and he ended up spinning himself out. And that was basically all she wrote. And Kyle Busch, he basically spun, turned around backwards and then spun it around, basically did a nice lazy 360 and ended up keeping the spot. Do I blame Harvick for doing that? No. Because he was just 1 point away, and that 1 point was right there in front of him. And when it comes to, I mean, as devalued as the championship has become with this format, I mean, the fact still remains, if you had a chance to go for the championship, and all that stood between you and a shot at the title was that one position, and the last thing, I mean, the only thing you could do, left to do, to get to the championship was to spin him out, what would you do in that situation? You would do the same thing that Harvick did. And to be fair to Harvick, he had the faster car. And he had a shot at it, and it just didn't work out. And him not making it into the championship four is what sparked these heated debates about the playoff. So there you go. So the four that have been eliminated from the playoff here in the round of 8 was Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Alex Bowman, and Kurt Busch. But I mean, that doesn't take away from the fact that this was still a damn good race. It really was. It was quite enjoyable. Lots of beating and banging. I mean, these guys were basically leaning on each other, which, I mean, at Martinsville, that's pretty much what you have to do. I mean, it's such a short track, a small track at that. It just sucks that, you know, the main takeaway from this is, you know, the debate about the playoff format. But, you know, what can you do? But let's go ahead and get into the results and all that good stuff, and then we'll get out of here and get ready for the final race of the season next week at Phoenix. Alright, so lead change count. We had 20 overall lead changes in this race. Pretty good. With 7 pure lead changes. So, not bad. Not bad whatsoever. The sad thing about this, that's more lead changes than the Pocono races in Indianapolis. And some of these other, like, super speedway races. And you wonder why people want more short tracks and road courses. So, star of the race. Believe it or not, I'm actually going to give it to Kevin Harvick. Yeah, I know. Cold day in hell, right? But I would actually agree with Kevin Harvick about, you know, the value of the championship not being what it is. And, you know, let's be honest here. He was terrible in the first part of this race, but they worked on that car. They worked on that car. He basically came back from 2 laps down to have a shot in the final turn to make the championship 4. If he would have done that a little bit better, just even a little bit, kept that car under control, he'd be going to Phoenix with a shot at the title. But for him to be able to come back, fight through all this adversity, to even have a shot at making the championship, I mean, what else can you say? And this is coming from a guy who cannot stand Kevin Harvick. I've made that abundantly clear many times over. But credit where credit is due. And honestly, I think he got screwed out of this championship. I mean, he was clearly the best driver all year. And the fact that he's not going to be able to compete for the title, it's just bullshit. Regardless of how I feel about Harvick. And once again, don't come at me with that, you know, comparisons to the NFL, because I'm just going to say, fuck yourself. I'm tired of that false equivalency bullshit. Tell it to someone who fucking cares. I'm done with that shit. So obviously the reject of the race is the playoff format. It sucks. It absolutely sucks. And Harvick getting knocked out when he was clearly the best driver of the year and would have locked up the championship under the old format. I mean, it just reaffirms that this playoff format is fucking garbage. I can't stand it, and I will celebrate the day that it finally comes to an end. With that in mind, here are your top 10 results for the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville. Chase Elliott with the win. course, a long way to win at Martinsville. He's had a couple opportunities here in the past, but has always been screwed out of them in one way or another. Denny Hamlin. But he dominated this race. He led 236 laps. Was clearly the dominant car of the day. His good friend Ryan Blaney comes home in second after leading 36 laps. You have Joey Logano coming home in third. Brad Keselowski in fourth. Lucky bastard there. Kurt Busch in the top five. Nice run for him. You have Alex Bowman in sixth. Despite the fact that he had a really good playoff. I mean, he was a long shot to make it into the championship four, but can't say he didn't try, I'll tell you that much. You have Eric Almirola, Clint Bowyer in his final run at Martinsville. Kyle Busch, who got spun on the final lap, but still ended up with a top 10. And Matt DiBenedetto with a top 10 finish here at Martinsville. Which means we are down to the championship four. And who the hell are the championship four? Well, we have two Penske drivers, a JGR driver, and a Hendrick Motorsports driver. Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott. Of course, this is not the first time for Keselowski, Logano, and Hamlin. They've been to the championship four before. Logano and Keselowski have won championships before. Denny Hamlin's been close to a championship but hasn't been able to close the deal yet. This is going to be Chase Elliott's first championship four appearance. He's only 24 years old. I'm going to be completely honest here. If Chase Elliott somehow wins this championship, he's going to become a superstar. Now, I don't know if it's going to be to the same level as Dale Jr. When he won at the 2001 Pepsi 400. Y'all remember that? When he basically ascended to superstardom. But if Chase Elliott wins this championship, there's no question he is going to be a true superstar in the sport. But those are your championship four heading into the championship finale next week at Phoenix. As for my final rating for the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville, like I said, you can have this with or without the playoff, with or without it. This was still a fantastic race. I enjoyed it. Of course, could the finish have been better? If we had like a close battle at the end instead of Chase Elliott basically running out to like a 5-second lead and just saying, "See ya, wouldn't want to be a." Yeah. But I mean, overall, this was still a pretty damn good Martinsville race. So my final rating for the Xfinity 500 will be a 7.75 out of 10. So pretty damn good rating. And it's one of the reasons why I want to see more short tracks, Well, of course, Auto Club's going to be converting to a short track after 2021. So, we'll have 4 short tracks on the schedule in 2022. So that'll be something to look forward to. But that's going to do it for this edition of The Fuel. Oh, what a crazy fucking week this was. But next week we finally come to the end of another long and grind-filled season. What a turbulent season this has been with the COVID shit and everything else. But we're finally at the end. We just have one more to go, and we can finally take a break for about 3 months. And quite frankly, I think we all need it because this has been yet another long-ass season. But we'll finally bring it to a close next week right here on Motorsport Monday. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the Packer Man signing out. See you later. You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.